If you need help deciding whether Regiments is the right Cold War battle tactics RTS for you, this video will answer all of your questions by starting with a 60-second, too long didn't read overview before looking at the detailed mechanics so you can get a real feel for what it's like to actually play the game, before answering some more practical questions to help you decide whether this game is worth your time and money today. Regiments is a single-player RTS set in the Cold War. There's no base building or scientific research, just choose your regiment and off you go, similar to Wargame Red Dragon and Warno, but with a slower pace overall. You play as either the US, Soviets, or a handful of their allies in a skirmish mode against the AI, or through 7 operations that take you through the Cold War Gone Hot scenario from the viewpoint of both sides of the Iron Curtain. Each operation is split into multiple stages, and then you have a limited number of 20-minute phases within which to accumulate victory points. Between each phase, you will spend resource points to patch up your battered units, attach and upgrade specialized task forces, and upgrade your tactical aids, such as artillery and airstrikes, before sending them back out there to complete the objectives for each stage of the operation. So if you enjoy the military hardware of the Cold War setting, prefer a slower pace to your RTS games, and don't mind the lack of multiplayer, then Regiments might be your cup of tea. If that's not put you off, then let's delve into the detail of what it's like to actually play the game to help you figure out whether it's right for you, starting with the details of the setting, factions, and format of the game before delving into the detailed mechanics of how you play it. The main campaign takes you through a fictional conflict centered around Germany from the 3rd to the 24th of June 1989, where you'll see both sides of the conflict utilizing relatively historically accurate units and doctrines. The factions you'll be able to play as are the US, Soviets, West Germany, Belgium, East Germany, Poland, and the British, though there are 4 other factions in the latest DLC, which we'll look at later in the video. The campaign is made up of 7 multi-stage operations with a bit of a story and narrative for you to follow, and there are also 2 other operations that were released as part of a free LC that are unlocked partway through the main campaign. As a side note, there is also a procedurally generated campaign in the latest paid-for DLC, which we'll discuss later, but back to the main campaign for now. Once you've chosen an operation to play through, you don't decide which regiment you'll fight with, that's decided for you. But you can choose between 4 difficulty levels, and also the advanced rules allow you to change several elements of the gameplay, such as increasing the length of each phase, or giving units the chance of inflicting additional damage, and you can even tweak a variety of other metrics to customize the gameplay experience. Basically, customization is pretty good in this game. Each operation is made up of stages, usually between 1 and 3. Each stage comes with a new map and new objectives. Completing objectives gives you victory points, and you need to accumulate enough victory points throughout that operation's multiple stages so you have enough by the end of the operation to ultimately win and progress to the next operation. Each stage of an operation is further subdivided into 20-minute phases, usually 2 or 3 of them. Between these phases is when you can reinforce and upgrade your troops, and at the end of each phase is when victory points are recorded. For the most part, you are free to progress to the next phase, even if you scored 0 victory points in the previous one. But remember, you need enough points by the end of the operation as a whole in order to progress. So you might choose to restart a phase, or even go back to a prior phase to reset a bad run and try again. Regiments is not a deck-building game, but the brigades under your control do come in all kinds of predetermined shapes and sizes, made up of various levels of heavy armor, mechanized troops, airborne, and more. Although you can't edit the brigades themselves, you can add up to 3 specialized task forces, which will only contain a few units, but give you an opportunity to add that little bit of extra armor, reconnaissance, artillery, attack helicopters, etc. to your brigade, though you need to earn a currency called Operational Authority to purchase and upgrade these task forces. Operational Authority is obtained as a somewhat secondary objective, basically by capturing control points during gameplay, and they are also spent on repairing your forces between phases and purchasing more tactical aids, such as artillery barrages. So managing Operational Authority throughout an operation is absolutely key. The vast majority of your units will be a variety of main battle tanks and also infantry. All infantry are mechanized, coming with either an APC taxi or a more potent IFV. When loaded up, they travel faster but have less firepower. However, once the infantry are deployed, they travel slower but have more firepower. In addition to tanks and infantry, there are scouts to help you locate and identify enemy units. There's artillery, which has insane range but requires manual firing. There are anti-air units, a command vehicle, which enhances the stats of the units around it, a supply vehicle for when units run out of ammo and need some repairs, and there are, of course, helicopters, which can be a fun glass cannon to use against tanks. Although there is a diverse selection of units and some detailed statistics, overall there are fewer units to choose from and fewer unit details than in other similar games. But this reduced unit variety leads to less memorizing of statistics and more focusing on the actual battle tactics and positioning of your units, which is neither good nor bad, it just comes down to personal preference. Each map in Regiments is made up of several capture points that are connected. Generally, your objectives will involve capturing or defending these points, but you can only capture a point once you've captured another point that is adjacent to the one you're trying to capture. Some of these capture points will yield victory points at the end of that phase, or otherwise operational authority to spend on your units. Once you're actually in the game, you'll be commanding platoons of units, so a unit might have 4 tanks, or a handful of IFVs, plus the infantry that ride in them, for example. You have a limited number of deployment points, though as you can see, you only ever have a handful of units to deploy anyway. You have a spawn point, or 2, where your units will deploy from, and it takes them a long time to reach anywhere. This is a noticeably slower game than its super fast, clicky fingers counterparts, so you really have to think ahead when spawning or repositioning your units. The camera controls are incredibly flexible in-game, and you can assign hotkeys on the fly for quick access to units. You can tap F for units to take the fastest route, you can queue up commands with Shift, you can ask your IFVs to unload their infantry once they've arrived at a particular spot. Basically, the controls are standard, if not slightly simplistic. Your units gain experience as they fight, which makes a big difference to their resilience and potency. But they lose that experience when they're destroyed, so it's important to utilize the retreat mechanic, which is much like Company of Heroes. Double tap Q and the unit will blow smoke and retreat before disappearing. They'll then rearm, refuel, and most importantly, will maintain the experience they've gained. You can then redeploy them back to the field once you've built up enough deployment points. Basically, retreating units is a big thing in this game. There are off-map tactical aids such as smoke and artillery barrages, A-10 Warthog runs, and a variety of others that you can invest in between phases. Compared with other similar games, you need to use smoke and artillery often in order to successfully take on an entrenched enemy, with a slight time delay and accumulation of points required before you can deploy it again. Ultimately, this game is about combined arms. Though there is an emphasis on main battle tanks and infantry, you generally want to scout out ahead and identify the enemy units, so you know what you're fighting, but it also makes them easier to hit. You then want to use artillery to shake them up a bit, before sending your main battle tanks in to soak up damage while your IFVs flank and take the point. It's worth noting that tanks can exchange many rounds when facing each other head-on, but a blow to the side or rear can be absolutely devastating, which is true of any RTS game, but in Regiments, side and rear hits are particularly potent. As I've previously alluded, the pace of Regiments is slower than most other RTS games, and there are a few reasons for that. Firstly, units move slowly, repositioning them takes time, and being caught out in the open can be deadly. Also, some units take a long time to aim, fire, and reload. In addition, once a unit has been stationary for a while, they get an entrenchment bonus which increases over time. This bonus makes a real difference to that unit's defensive stats, so having units already in position and remaining there is very powerful. This game isn't about racing your units around everywhere at blistering speeds, it's about choosing logical locations for your units and, ideally, keeping them there to maintain their defensive bonuses. It's also worth mentioning that forests and built-up areas further increase the defensive bonus a unit receives, making the edge of forests and built-up areas the logical position for your units 9 times out of 10. This game isn't about clicking quickly, it's about clicking with purpose. And ultimately, you can speed it up if you're finding everything a little too slow. I found 1.5 times speed was perfect for me. The Skirmish mode is against the AI only, with up to 4 players and 2 teams. There are 4 different modes to choose from, which are slight variations on capturing points or defending them. There are 22 maps to choose from and an impressive variety of weather conditions, along with day and night cycles. The main issue here is the lack of multiplayer against real people, but if you're happy playing against the AI, you can see for yourself that there are several options for you to keep things fresh once you're finished with the main campaign. It's also worth mentioning the AI, as it's some of the best I've ever played against in a strategy game. It generally avoids doing anything too stupid, which is a good start, but seems to have a grasp on combined arms warfare, and from my own personal experience, it tends not to attack you the same way twice, which was a pleasant surprise to say the least. I'm no AI expert, but yeah, a tentative thumbs up on the Regiments AI from me. Hopefully by now you have an idea of what it's like to actually play the game, so let's address some of the more practical considerations that might affect your purchasing decision. Although the tutorial teaches the basics, there is a small learning wall, as it can seem difficult to win 1v1 engagements or to capture points until you understand the mechanics a little better, after which the game is relatively straightforward against a medium-level AI. To help you up that initial learning curve, please check out my tips and tricks for beginners video in the description below. Although there are many operations with several stages, the 20-minute phases of Regiments makes this game absolutely perfect for those who have very little time on their hands to game these days. On the flip side, though, the total lack of online multiplayer or even co-op cannot be ignored or overlooked, as it will be a disappointment to many. Regiments currently has one DLC, called Winds of Change, that adds a surprising amount of content, so much so that I've created an entirely separate video on this, which is linked in the description below if you want the full details, but here are the headlines. You can play as 4 new nations: Czechoslovakia, Netherlands, Canada, and France, which of course means many more units. On top of that, there are now airborne assault units, which are basically helicopters that drop off infantry, then disappear. There are new tactical aid options, the main one being a combat air patrol as an alternative anti-air defense. And then, the biggest ticket item is the new Warpaths game mode, a procedurally generated campaign where you can choose one regiment to fight in a string of battles. You select the length of the warpath, which will then randomize the maps with various objectives along the way, and you must accumulate enough victory points by the end to emerge victorious. On the whole, the DLC has been well received by the Regiments community, as it adds some much-needed content to the base game, with a very positive rating on Steam. But remember, this is all single-player only. Compared to the competition, the base game looks relatively cheap. However, we must remember the lack of multiplayer, so spending that much more on a title such as Warno with its multiplayer and Army General campaign does make sense. But you then get a regular 30% discount on Regiments, which is literally once per month, so please never pay full price for this game. Then we have the Winds of Change DLC, which currently hasn't seen a sale, as it's so new, but given the amount of content, it's already at an attractive price point. So with all that said, who is this game right for? Overall, the base game is single-player only, and even then lacks content and replayability, until you look at combining it with the Winds of Change DLC. At which point the quantity of single-player content does look impressive, even with the combined cost of the base game and DLC together. If you enjoy RTS games such as Gates of Hell Ostfront, but haven't played a tactics game like this before, then Regiments is a good starting point given the slower pace and less units to memorize, making it less intimidating than its rivals. It's also at a good price point provided you're not interested in multiplayer, but if price is an issue, you might be better off starting with either Wargame Red Dragon or Steel Division 2, which are dirt cheap in the regular sales. However, I should point out that Regiments has a free demo for you to try on Steam, so what have you got to lose? If you're sure on the Cold War era and this style of game, then realistically these days you're choosing between Regiments and Warno. Although more expensive, Warno does include multiplayer, so that decision comes down to whether you are happy playing solely against the AI, which many of you are, or if you need multiplayer, then Warno is the way. Just bear in mind that Warno is a bit more intimidating to learn. If you have any further questions, please feel free to ask, or if you already own the game and have some additional information you'd like to add, please let us all know in the comments below. And if you found the video useful, please leave a like for the algorithm gods, and consider subscribing if you'd like to see more of this style of review. See ya.